Hey guys, it's Tim Melvin of Banking on Profits coming to you from down here in Central Florida. Quite honestly, the plan today was to spend the entire day at the pool, maybe barbecue something up a bit later on. But the weather hasn't cooperated. It's been unusually overcast today. So I was going to shoot the video tomorrow morning, but I figured, oh, what the heck? The wife and my youngest have gone off to see some new space battle movie thing of Valerian or something like that. Didn't really have an interest and couldn't convince him that Dunkirk was a better choice. So I decided I'd stay home, get the video done for the week, maybe watch a little baseball, read a book, probably work a nap in there somewhere this afternoon. But anyway, this week I've come across a bunch of different interviews and discussions of Ed Thorpe, including Barry Ritholtz did a very nice one. Subscribers, that went out in your reading list with a link to that, so you might want to check that out. It's a great interview. I'm a huge fan of Ed Thorpe. Here's a guy who first, he took on the casinos, and he beat them. And it's not just in blackjack, because remember, he and Claude Shannon also beat them bad in roulette. They did so well in baccarat that it changed forever the type of bets you can and cannot place in an American casino in a baccarat game. So pure math, did it for the love of it. The money was just kind of a byproduct. As you know, I did a great interview with him earlier this year that was sent out, and it's still floating around the web. Huge fan of Ed Thorpe's. Once he beat the casino, he took that same math to the stock market, doing quantitative types of trades involving warrants and options and later stocks and convertible bonds, and did right around 20% a year for a very long period of time, and recently wrote a book called A Man for All Markets, which really it goes in the top 10 of great market books. If you have not read that book, please go out and buy it. But we've read the interview, and another reason Thorpe is such a big I'm such a big fan of Ed Thorpe is that much like I approach the market, he believes in numbers, not stories. And he uses the Kelly criteria to size his bets. I use a variation of it in picking position sizes for the portfolio. And here we're going to count on the numbers, not the stories. When we know we're right, we're going to bet pretty big. And when it's time to be defensive and we don't have a huge edge, it's time to be cautious and maybe limit our bets a little bit. So let's think about what that looks like. Where do we have a big edge on the market? When we were going in and we just have a huge edge, what does that look like? Well, that looks like a market that's probably been falling. There's lots of good and great companies available at very low multiples of earnings before interest and taxes and very low price to book values. There's bargains and quality companies all over the place. Everybody you talk to is scared. They're selling. There's not a lot of competition. You're kind of a buyer of last resort, so to speak. A lot of fear. At that point in time, an investor with a value mindset and a stockpile of cash has a huge edge over the market, and it's time to bet real big. Now, what does a cautious period of time look like? Well, a lot like today. Stock price has been rising for 8 years. There's starting to be a lot of enthusiasm. There is an overriding theme of indexing present in the market. Wall Street does seem to need a theme to ride to an illogical conclusion to create some type of bear market. High valuations, we certainly have that with the market at about 26 times earnings right now on a trailing basis using the S&P 500 according to the latest edition of Barron's. So this looks a lot like a time to be a little more cautious, maybe bet a little smaller, save up a little bit more cash, and rely on what the numbers are telling us. Because I know the stories are great. Low interest rates forever, new technologies coming alive every day, all true. But it is time to be cautious. Valuations are very high. There is building enthusiasm for the market. Now, does any of that mean that the stock market's going to go down tomorrow? Jim Mooney of Ballpost wrote the shareholder letter for Ballpost this quarter, and he said that what he sees is the low volatility and growing leverage because of low volatility models is really increasing the probability and possibility of a stock market crash. He thinks that there could be hundreds of millions of dollars out there in these volatility-based strategies, that if this all starts to unwind and volatility moves higher, we could see some really forced panic selling. Now add on the ETF impact that we've talked about that creates another wave of forced selling, and that could get quite ugly quite fast. Am I predicting it's going to happen? No. I hope it does. I'm a long-term value investor. I'm 56 years old. A one good crash will set me up for the rest of my life. So bring it on. I'd be a big fan. We've been very unreasonable in our approach to investing in bank stocks. We look for selected criteria, selected safety factors, and we're not willing to pay a high price at all when we're investing. And most of the time, we're looking for certain characteristics of the other investors on the holders list before we enter a stock. We've just been ridiculously unreasonable, and hey, it's worked pretty well. So, will our stocks go down? They will. Will we get murdered? No, we won't. Our stocks will go down, but they will come back up. We should not suffer any complete losses. If the fundamentals of any of our banks began to deteriorate, we would simply sell them at that point in time. So we've got financially solid, strong banks purchased at ridiculously low prices. So will we be permanently harmed by a bear market in stocks? No, we won't. And we do have cash in the portfolio. I've been advising you all along to be building up your cash stockpile right now. So if you've been listening and we get a crash, yay us. We're going to make a ton of money. Remember, fortunes are born in bear markets. So that's what we're hoping to see one. Anyway, our devotion to unreasonableness is more than working. So I looked at the portfolio. We changed data providers. We really went back and kind of crunched all the numbers. The main portfolio, where we apply very strictly the safety criteria, the price criteria, and the co-investor criteria, is doing about 17.5% a year since we started on this little adventure. That's pretty good. The community bank stocks that we have selected a little more aggressively in the Community Bank Stock Investor monthly publication, they're doing about 26% a year since we started doing that back in 2014. And then the bonus banks, we've been putting out bonus banks since 2014. During that period of time, I don't like to be a sensationalist, but these are really small little stocks. They're bonus stocks because they're so small we can't guarantee that you're going to be able to buy, that everybody on the subscriber list is going to be able to buy the stock. So I'm not going to put it in the portfolio. That's going to inflate returns to a very large degree. We don't want to do that. We're very happy to report the returns that we have. Anyway, these little tiny bonus stocks. We did one on Friday in the latest edition of the newsletter. It was large for a bonus pick. It was a whopping $19 million in market cap. But you know what? It's more than double the other two portfolios. It's the annualized rate of return on that is a little bit north of 50% a year right now. So spectacular performance in these little tiny banks. We're ridiculously unreasonable about what we'll pay for a bank, and it's paying off. And I think it also gives us a substantial margin of safety. There was an article, Andrew Berry in Barron's this week, and he was talking about the banks and what regulatory reform might look like and might mean. And he pointed out that, about 2/3 of the regulatory changes that the banks are looking for don't require congressional approval. The regulators could go ahead and do these on their own without additional congressional oversight. We're hoping that's what's going to happen. The stuff that needs congressional oversight, well, Congress needs parental oversight at this point in time. So getting anything done through what passes for Congress right now, I don't hold out much hope. I don't know that I wouldn't let those guys watch my dog. I mean, they're just making a complete and utter mess. Keeping it apolitical. It's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's everybody associated with that august legislative body. Washington, D.C. it's not a mess. It's been a mess my entire life. It's a circus. I don't ever remember seeing anything this ridiculous and ineffective in D.C. So 2/3 of the changes can be made without congressional approval. That's very fortunate. But if everything were to pass, and we're hopeful sometime before 2018 ends, that Congress will actually say, hey, we're supposed to be doing a job here, and they'll get to regulatory reform. And the analysts are estimating that could be worth as much as a 30% increase in the earnings of many of the nation's banks. We would love to see that. So we're still hopeful we get regulatory reform. Tax reform would also be a huge boost for the banks. We're very well positioned, owning a lot of banks that will be direct beneficiaries of this. And of course, the consolidation continues. We saw a couple deals around the country this week, none for our portfolio, but as you know, our turn does eventually come around. So we'll just be patient and wait for it. Okay, on the book front this week, we're kind of getting into the summer doldrums here a little bit on the new release side of things anyway. We did get a new Quinn Coulson novel by Ace Atkins. Ace Atkins is a tremendous writer. He's one of the authors that has picked up Robert Parker's Spencer series and has been doing a great job with that. But on this one, this is his own series. Quinn Coulson's a great character. If you haven't read them all, I'd start with book one, go all the way through. Fantastic kind of summer detective adventure recreational reading. Also, you know, every time I think I've read the entire Jack Higgins catalog, they release some more that have just been around forever. And I read two of those this week. I read Night Judgment at Sinos, excellent book. But then Pay the Devil, fantastic book, one of the best books I've read so far this summer. And since the new release calendar is really light, for this week especially, I'll probably dig a little deeper into that old Jack Higgins catalog and see if I can't find some more of those adventure novels to read. And of course, we just started this. We started it and came back to it. Rise of the Cajun Mariners. This is just a very cool book. You can tell I'm keeping it right here on my desk, reading a little bit throughout the day. It's the story of the marine offshore oil and gas industry, the guys that take the supplies and the people out there by boat, and deals with the Cajun population that basically started and grew that segment of the business. It's not an everyday book, but it's a pretty cool story, so I'm enjoying that one so far as well. So that's about all I've got for you on the reading front this week. Be patient though, guys, because I was looking over the August and September new release list. They are fantastic. Just all your favorite authors, all my favorite authors. Everybody's got a book coming out in August and September, and then we go right into the holiday book release schedule. So a little slow this week, really picks up the pace the next week, and I think it stays good for the rest of the year. So a lot of really exciting, interesting titles coming out, both recreationally and on the business and investment side, as well as biographies, which I'm a big fan of. So anyway, the Orioles, man, they really started well this week. Took 4 in a row out of Texas, had a comeback in there. Pitching looked like actual major league pitching. So you could almost get a little excited and say, you know, maybe they played my video for them and decided that they'd act like baseball players. Yeah, no, then Houston came to town. We've currently dropped 2 in a row. And in spite of solid offensive performances, on Friday night, we actually scored 7 runs and still lost the baseball game. Pitching has totally reverted to pathetic. And we got 2 more with Houston, including one starting here in a few minutes that I'll be running down to watch upon completing this video. So that's where we are. The Orioles need to be sellers at the break. They're not going to make the playoffs. They just don't have the pitching to get us there. We've got Dylan Bundy going today, so, you know, hopefully he's having a great year. Maybe we could get one of these games from Houston, but the future does not look bright. I'm hoping they sell, bring in a lot of prospects, take a deep breath, and try to rebuild this thing going forward, but we'll see. Hottest teams in baseball, Seattle is really heating up out in the West. Not happy to hear that because it puts me on the wrong side of my annual bet. With a Mariners fan. I've been winning that bet the last few years on total games and each game in the series. Not feeling too good about it right now, I can tell you. And then the Cubs, the Nationals, and the Dodgers. I said all along the Cubs were going to make a run. It looks like that's exactly what they're doing. The Nationals, it's their year. That's all there is to it. Bryce Harper in the month of July. You ready for this? 7 home runs. He's hitting .428, 17 RBIs. That's just in July. His slugging percentage is ridiculous. On base percentage, ridiculous. He's getting on base. If you don't walk him, he's going to hit you and hit you hard. And, of course, they've got that great pitching staff. So I really believe this is the Nationals' year. And the only team standing in their way, in my opinion, is the other hottest team in baseball, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are just playing great ball. And they're fun to watch. Cost you some sleep if you live on the East Coast like I do, but that's a fun baseball team to watch, I'll tell you that. So that's where we are. Same environment. Nothing really changed from that last week. Let's be careful out there. Okay, there's a lot of risks in the system. I don't know when or if or how or why the market will turn. Right now, there is no valid reason for the market to turn. We're getting into earnings season. They're not great, but they're okay. The economy's not great, but it's okay. Job growth it's not great. If you're in a skilled position and you have a talent or a trade, you're doing well. If you're an unskilled worker, you're in a lot of trouble. We're playing a new game approach to examining the economy around here. It's called Talk to Your Uber Driver. Now, I'm not the most tech savvy guy in the world, and it was just last year when I was in town for the World Series in Chicago with my daughter that I took my first Uber, and probably didn't use that app again for 6 months. And then one night we were going out, and it was like, who's going to be, kind of the designated driver? And I said, you know what, why don't neither one of us be the designated driver? We can all relax, have an extra glass of wine. We'll just take this Uber thing. And since then, Uber's become our transportation of choice when we're going out to dinner or to meet friends for drinks or whatever. And I gotten in the habit of talking to the Uber drivers, and it's pretty remarkable. Now, all of them pretty much unskilled workers. About half of them are doing it as a second job to make ends meet. The other half are doing it because they can't find a job in unskilled labor or general warehouse work or that type of stuff. There's no jobs for them at this point in time, and that's just going to get worse. I tell all my friends with kids, look, coding is the new middle class. Okay, software, that type of thing. That's going to be the new blue-collar work. You need to have a profession, a passion, specialized training, or you're really going to get left behind by this economy. So anyway, got mildly sidetracked there. But so, we're just kind of run along. There's risks. No real reason for the market to go down. We're not going to know the reason until after it actually happens. But given where valuations are and the fact that stocks have, in fact, been up for about 8 years in a row now, let's be careful out there. Stick to stocks that are rated buy among the focus or bonus bank stocks, and those stocks that are on the buy list for the main banking on profits portfolio. Doesn't give us a lot to work with. I think we had 14 names on the buy list this week, but this is a good time to be cautious, pile up a lot of cash. We're still outperforming the market with the main portfolio right now, as we are with the focus and the bonus banks. So we can afford to be a little bit careful, hold a little bit of extra cash, and wait for an opportunity that looks like a significant edge for us as long-term value investors. Anyway, I've got an Orioles game to go cry through, book to read, maybe get a little bit of lunch. I'm sure the dog's about ready to go for a walk. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here for this week, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great week, everybody.